Right now, let's bring on NFL staff writer for The Athletic, the purveyor of truth of the All-22. It is Ted Nguyen. Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Now, I want to know, is there a book to start this off that you want to plug, like A.J. Brown reading Inner Excellence on the sideline, so we can really spike those book sales?
That's a good question. I'm forgetting the title now, but there's a book about negotiations from a famous FBI negotiator that I've been reading, and I want to try some of those tactics out next time we get into contract situations. If I remember a name, I'll plug it.
Okay,
Kevin, I actually have deployed some of those tactics before.
Oh, wow.
We did all right.
So one name that's come up a lot here with the Cowboys, we've talked about the idea of Aaron Glenn as the head coach of the Cowboys. It seemed like he did an excellent job scheming against the Vikings to close the regular season, and then the Rams just kind of mimicked that strategy. Do you feel like that's the case, and what have been your thoughts about his performance this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think Aaron Glenn, he's from that Saints tree where they're going to play a ton of man coverage. They're going to play a ton of bump and run coverage. They're going to be aggressive up front. And, I mean, you just have to give him a lot of credit for dealing with all of the injuries that Detroit has dealt with and being able to perform like that against the Vikings in a game that would decide the top seed in NFC. And what they did was they played a lot of bump and run coverage, but it wasn't just straight bump and run. They did some smart stuff with doubling Justin Jefferson and things with leverage that really helped out some of their players. They blitz a ton. He has a lot of interesting blitzes. And the Rams copied it. The Rams are a kind of a soft coverage team. They like to play back and take away those explosives, but they did the smart thing by bumping the Vikings receivers, making Sam Darnold hold the ball, and it really allowed their pass rushers, they're really good young pass rushers, to take advantage of those Viking offensive linemen that aren't great in one-on-one pass protection.
Is it fair to say that you think that could potentially bode very well for the Lions' playoff chances going forward?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there's still some very, concerning personnel issues just because, when you're dealing with 20 injuries on the defensive side of the ball, there's only so much you can do schematically. And in the playoffs, those things tend to get exposed. So we'll see what he can do. I mean, I'm already impressed with what he's done with that defense, given his situation. But if he could get that defense to perform at a high level in the playoffs, I mean, it just kind of further solidifies his candidacy as a top head coach.
Ted, we're here thinking about the head coaching situation here, of course, and hearing all these names being floated around. And I know you have a lot of respect for what DeMeco Ryans has done, and we do too. Like, his defense has been so much fun to watch. Him and Robert Saleh, they went through San Francisco, and Saleh's name is popping up around Dallas. What are the similarities? What are the ideas that Saleh brings specifically?
Yeah, well, they're both from the Seattle Cover 3, Pete Carroll family. And really, Robert Saleh was one of the first guys to really kind of advance that system. After they lost the Super Bowl to the Chiefs, the following year, they kind of started mixing in some quarters coverage, some of those Fangio ideas as far as disguising, and that really took the defense to the next level. And DeMeco Ryans was on his staff as a linebacker coach at that time. And then when Robert Saleh left, DeMeco kind of furthered that idea. They still play with that 4-down, super aggressive, those aggressive principles as far as getting upfield. But then, you add some different type of coverages. He does some really interesting things with disguises. And he just seems to always call – they're not a heavy blitzing team, but DeMeco has he's a great knack for calling the blitzes at the right time. And he just always seems to get quarterbacks with it. So I think, that Cover 3 tree has kind of passed on the league, but there's still those coaches around the league like Saleh and DeMeco, like we talked about. But to me, DeMeco is the guy that's really modernized it and made it more viable for them to play against these modern offenses.
The other thing too is Kellen Moore's name has popped up yet again here in DFW, and his journey from here. I know his tree was it's kind of weird because it was under the Jason Garrett. There's a weird group that he kind of was, but he's kind of creating his own path here. Then he goes to the Chargers, and now he's in Philly. He's been successful offensively. What have you seen that he's done that's been successful for him?
Yeah, I mean, I think with Kellen, he's a guy that's always learning and always trying to kind of modernize his offense or fit new ideas into his offense. He's always looking at different places, whether it's a college here, a D2 school here, even high school ideas. So I really like that about him, and he's been able to adapt to different types of quarterbacks, from Dak to Justin Herbert, and now Jalen Hurts, who's a very different quarterback. And that Eagles offense, even though they're talented, their offense got really stale last year, and they didn't have answers against the blitz. And Kellen Moore has come in, and now Jalen Hurts is pretty good against the blitz. I mean, that was a huge issue coming into the season, and now they have answers, and he's performed well, and that's part of why the Eagles offense hasn't hit a wall. And they've made a change with Saquon Barkley and getting into more under center runs and doing less of the option things, and they've been successful doing it. So I think the best thing to say about Kellen Moore is he's been able to adapt to the talent that he's had and run a lot of different systems. And I think that's an important trait for a coach.
Kevin, that was what we felt that we had here whenever he was here. He just kept collecting plays and he just kept adding to it, but it never really felt like he had a true identity. But that can be a benefit at times whenever people are like, oh, you have no clue what to expect from this guy.
Well, if you're talking about identity, I know some coaches go more conservative in the playoffs, but as much as Dan Campbell gets talked about, it sure didn't seem like Dan Quinn went in the conservative direction to kick off the playoffs, did it?
No, the Dans are very aggressive, and Dan Quinn was aggressive on fourth down all of during the year, and I mean with good reason. The Commanders were far and away the best fourth down team in the league. I mean, I forgot what the percentage is. I think it's over 10% higher than second place as far as converting on fourth downs, and part of that is because Jaden Daniels he's amazingly poised, and he just keeps finding ways to turn dead plays into positive yardage. And it's not all explosive plays like Lamar Jackson, but like to turn a negative 3-yard gain to a 4-yard gain is huge. And he's been able to do that all season and keep the chains moving, and especially on fourth down. I mean, when you look at that third down play against the Buccaneers when they had a chance to, turn that field goal into the last play of the game if they converted, that play was dead. I mean, they had him dead to rights in the backfield, but he was able to get away from the pass rusher and get that first down to really seal the game. So that, I wouldn't be surprised if we didn't see a punter the entire Lions Commanders games, because these guys just don't like to punt.
One of our co-hosts has been very bullish on the Rams, and he just keeps saying, "I'm picking the Rams on everything." He keeps going with it. Is this team's not doing it with smoke and mirrors, are they?
No, they are a legitimate team. Matthew Stafford has had a lot of postseason experience, especially during that Super Bowl run. Sean McVay has postseason experience. This offense is as healthy as it's been all season. I mean, we know about Puka missing all that time and finally coming back, but they've had a bunch of offensive line issues all season too, but now their offensive line is healthy. As long as they can protect Matthew Stafford, this offense is going to be one of the more explosive offenses in the postseason. My concern with them is defensively, and they've played much better defensively, especially as some of those young guys got some maturity, but they still are very weak against the run. So if a team could run the ball on them and avoid those third down passing situations when they really shine, that defense is going to have a tough time. And they're going to be playing the Eagles, and the Eagles, as we know, have one of the best rushing attacks in NFL. So that's something that is concerning. So this is a good Rams team, but I feel like this matchup against this Eagles team is not a good one for them.
Talking with Nguyen right here on 105.3 The Fan from The Athletic. I know it's easy to get excited about any of these divisional round games, but By far and away, the one that intrigues me the most is the Bills and the Ravens. What's your feel for the Pulse going into that game?
It's fun.
Oh, man, this is a game where I've gone back and forth on who I think is going to win the game. I mean, you have two legitimate MVP candidates. I think the Buffalo defense really struggles against the run. They're a smaller defense, and the Ravens almost ran for 300 yards against them in Week 4. And the Bills' defense is healthier, especially with Matt Milano back, but he hasn't quite looked like his all-pro form coming back from the injury. But again, this is a light front, and this is a very strong, physical Ravens offense. But Dave Flowers, who is probably going to miss the game, that's a big deal because they don't have a receiver like him that can take the top off of defenses. So without him, everything gets a little bit more compressed. But that doesn't matter if you can't stop Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on the ground. So I have questions with that. But on the other side of the ball, Josh Allen is playing really well in that Week 4 matchup. They really struggled to get the ball deep. But at that time, Keon Coleman wasn't quite as developed as he is now. They didn't have Amari Cooper. So you could still beat this Ravens secondary deep, as we saw against Pittsburgh. They've gotten a lot better since Kyle Hamilton moved to free safety. But if you could find a way to isolate Brandon Stevens, one of their outside corners, on one-on-ones, that's where you get them deep. And obviously Josh Allen and his legs are going to make a huge difference in the game. I have a feeling this is a game where you run Josh Allen 10-plus times.
Wow.
Now, Ted, your phone rings, and on the other end of it, it's Jerry Jones, and he says, "Ted, I've been thinking about getting this Deion Sanders as my head coach." Are you telling him yes, no? What's your approach with that?
I mean, I get the appeal of Deion Sanders because he's so charismatic, and you're hoping that you kind of get this Dan Campbell thing where you get the buy-in. He's a leader of men and all those things. But like, if you just remove the name Deion Sanders and you just looked at his college resume, like, does that scream like a guy that should be the top of the list of NFL candidacy? I mean, he brought back Colorado, and he deserves a ton of credit for that. But he's had one 9-4 season, 9-4 season there. It's not like they have sustained success, and that's a legitimate program out of nowhere. And I always have hesitancy when it comes to college to pro coaching. It just feels like a different game, and I understand Deion understands the NFL game. He played it. But I just don't know if the resume is there. It just seems more of like a marketing move. Like, if you make this hire, you're going to be in the news. I mean, the Cowboys are already always in the news cycle. Uh-huh. But I mean, this kind of guarantees that they're going to be at the top of the list, every week. But it just doesn't seem like a move where you look at it on paper and it makes sense to me.
So you gave us all the football information, and then perhaps people should go buy the book, Never Split the Difference.
Never Split the Difference, right?
There you go.
Yes.
That's the book.
Thank you very much for the time, for the information. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.